Hey everybody, it's your girl Planet Ty on deck. I hope you guys are having a great day, afternoon, and or evening whenever you guys are seeing this. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys already know I appreciate that, right? Okay, so today I am giving you guys PSA, better known as public service announcement, on why you didn't get that job. If you guys want to hear what's tea, all you guys got to do is stay tuned. Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming back. You guys already know I appreciate that. Now, please note, the opinions expressed in this video are solely mine. I am not attempting in any way to represent any business or organization or anything outside of yours truly, Planet Ty. You guys may question, well, where do you get this information from? My life experience. If you guys want me to do a video on a little bit about my background and my life experience as to where I get all this information, then drop it in the comments and I'll put something together in the future, all right? Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, so tip number one, the reason why you didn't get that job. You had unexplained gaps in your work history. Yep. So you got a resume, right? On your resume, you may have listed that your last job, will say, was 3 or more years ago, right? And then your job before that was at least 3 years ago, and your job before that was 2 years ago, and then the job you had before that only lasted for 11 months. If you have gaps in your work history, if you have gaps in your work history and there's a long distance between times that you were actually considered a stable employee, then it's going to be more risky for an employer to want to take a risk on you. You guys with me? Light up the comments if you guys understand where I'm coming from. Okay? So if you guys have big gaps in your work history that could cause suspicion or could even, be unexplainable, before you go to an interview, you need to think about, okay, well, what were you doing between, 2015 and 2019 to the point where you're just applying for a job in 2020, right? How do you explain that? For instance, if you took time off to grow your family, if maybe you had a kid, or something else like that, if you happen to have been incarcerated during that time or something down that line, then you're going to have to be prepared to explain what is the reason that you were not employed for 3 to 5 years at a time, okay? So just keep that in the back of your head. Employers are most definitely looking at your work history, okay? Because when they think about you as a candidate for their organization, they are thinking about the stability of your position and how reliable you'll be able to be. So if you have unexplainable gaps in your work history, before you go to that interview, get your resume together. Go ahead and write it out and be prepared to answer questions about that. Light up the comments if you guys have ever applied for a job and you had gaps in your work history that were unexplainable. Let me know how that went in the comments, okay? All right, tip number 2. Your references didn't add up, okay? Now, you guys know that most places that you apply for, they say, hey, well, depending on what industry, but they'll say, hey, do you have any references? Okay, you guys know the reference is just somebody who's willing to vouch for you to say, Tom, Dick, or Harry worked here, and, during their employment, they were a good employee. They, were usually on time. They did all their responsibilities. They were well liked amongst their coworkers and peers, something like that, right? So if you're going to use a reference who is really your family or your friend, please make sure that they answer the phone when your potential employer is calling, okay? And they answer in a professional manner, okay? In addition, if a number is left for them, okay, encourage them to return the call. Now, many moons ago, I had a candidate who came in for an interview, and when it was time to call the references, none of the references were checking out. The references were not answered. One of the references answered the phone, and it was like 10 o'clock of the day, and you could tell the person clearly just woke up, and it sounded also like the person likely had a hangover or something like that. They sound pretty groggy. Now, in all fairness to the reference, hey, they may have worked an all-night shift or something, so they were tired. Maybe they were groggy, but it didn't sound too appealing, because here's a fun fact, guys. Most employers, if they're calling for references, they're not going to call any more than one time. They'll call one time. So if they leave a phone number to call back at, if you said, okay, my reference is Sam I Am the Superhero, right? Because y'all know she bestie. But if I say that that's my reference, Sam I Am the Superhero, if somebody calls asking her, well, what do you know about Planet Ty? Is she an amazing person? You know, all these other great things that they want to know about my work history, I expect her to answer the phone in a professional manner, ready to take the call. In addition, if they leave a voicemail for her, if she's not able to get to that, you know, to that call at that time, and they leave a voicemail, the goal is to call them back, let them know you got the message, and answer any additional questions they may have. You guys light up the comments and let me know. Have you ever been someone's reference? And be honest, have you ever used a family or friend as a reference? Because I'm gonna just keep it honest, I think we all make that mistake at least once in our life, you know. And I say mistake because as you'll realize that later on down the line, you may not want to use any family or friends as a reference. It's probably easier just to use, you know, your former business contacts as a reference. But you guys light up the comments and let me know what you guys think about that, okay? All right. Tip number 3. Tip number 3. Lying on your resume about your experience or your referrals. Okay, I've mentioned this in a couple other videos, and I'm going to have them linked in my description below. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Don't lie about things, because when you lie about them, they can be proven to be something else, and then you've already made yourself out to be the bad guy because you already told a story. So it's already best to just stay away from the lying, okay? Now, if a new potential employer calls your previous employer and they ask them, what was your experience like working with Planet Ty, right? And their response is less than savory, you don't know what they're gonna say, okay? They can say, you know, well, you know, she was a great person, but sometimes she was grumpy. You know, she had a grumpy attitude every Tuesday or something like that. Or she was late every Friday. We never could get her in the door on time on Fridays, right? You don't know what they're gonna say. So if you put them on your, as a referral, okay, and you say, oh yeah, this was my best job ever, this was my favorite job, I love doing everything about this job, and then you know, they call and they speak to, you know, your either your former manager, or they, you know, or if you're using the person as a referral, and the person say, hey, that person sucked, we were glad to get rid of him. Now, they should never legally say that. They should only, if they're your former employer, the only thing that they should ever say really is the time that you were there, you know, from what year to what year, if you left on amicable terms or if you left because they asked you to leave. They really shouldn't be saying anything too much outside of that area. But because we're all human beings, let me give you guys a fun fact. Sometimes people tend to share more than what they should. So take it as a grain of salt, but it is what it is, okay? So you guys make sure that if you're using somebody, you know, as a referral, that you guys are on the same page about them being that referral, and that you guys generally had a good rapport. But the moral of this story is don't bother lying, okay? Because it can blow up in your face in a very distasteful way. Okay, now I'm going to share a very brief story. Many moons ago, many moons ago, okay, you guys, I applied to work for this credit union. This is another reason why I tell you guys don't bother lying. Because I applied to work for this credit union, right? And the credit union, it's a banking institution, so they ask you a whole bunch of information. They want to know your credit score. They want to know if you have any outstanding debt. They want to know what your relationship was like with your previous employer. Of course, how long you've been at your current residence. They want to know a lot of sensitive information. Now, one of the things that I told a little bitty white lie about was, I think it was my credit score. And, you know, at the time I was a much younger woman, and, you know, I had some financial stuff that was kind of out there, y'all. It was kind of out there. It wasn't a win, but it was out there, okay? For sure it was there. And then anyhow, so of course they ran my, now they ask you, they have you sign a consent waiver form, and they ask you, do they have permission to check your background information, right? And I'm like, sure. But this is that young, it went straight over my head that they were going to do just that. They were going to check all of your background information and all your, you know, your financial information and so forth. So they did just that. And so I was, the first half of the interview, I was talking to a very charismatic interviewer. He had persona, he had style, he had class, he was very professional. And I was absolutely enjoying the interview, okay? I was enjoying the interview, and I thought, this is gonna be great. Okay, so he said, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get the files for the second part of your interview. And I said, the second part? I was completely, okay? And so anyhow, he comes back in there and he says, well, he had a highlighter marker that he had in his hand with the top off, and he had highlighted some information. And he said, well, I'm just going to give you some time to look at this, okay? And then he puts the file with a manila envelope that was open like this. He slides it over to me across the table, and he says, I'm going to give you some time to look at this. And he said, and when you're done, you can see yourself out. Out? My face was like a deer in headlights, you guys. You guys could have threw me over, okay? You could have thrown me over with a feather, okay? I was shocked. He said, you can see yourself out. So, okay, out after I gathered myself. Oh, so I'm not getting this job. Okay, cool. So, and then when he said you could, I just didn't understand, because we had such a great interview going on, or so I thought, okay? But the reality was, when he slid that information over, he highlighted information about my financial information and my credit score. Okay, my credit score. And I had told him, when he asked me a series of questions about my finances, my credit score, and if I was in any debt, I told him I didn't have any debt. I told him, I think my credit score is pretty good, or whatever else. Now, in reality, then I don't even know what my credit score was. I believe it was low, but I don't know exactly what it was. I know it was low. I know it was low. I just don't know exactly what the number was. But I told him I think it's fine, because in my head, well, I did, okay? Well, this was many, many, many moons ago, okay? But the lesson was learned, okay? Do not lie. If you know you have outstanding debt, if you know you don't have good credit, if you know your creditors are looking for you, they trying to repo your call, sis or bro, or whatever else the case may be, if you know you got all that going on, don't apply for a banking institution, okay? But more importantly, don't bother lying. Go ahead, and I find now in this day and time, I find it better to just go ahead. If there's a story behind something, it's not going to be a foolproof, guys, but if there's a story behind something, just tell it. Just tell it. Hey, I was young, I made some mistakes, I'm currently working through this and that to take care of that. Some people will give you an opportunity strictly based on honesty. That's a real thing. So you guys keep that in mind. Don't lie, and you can get an opportunity based on honesty. I've given out opportunities based on people being honest with me. And another thing, I go right back to remember the different things that happened to me. So I'm one of those people who is more on the level where I'm more willing to hear the story, to give you that opportunity and chance because of my own life experience. So I'm not ever one of those people who would just shun you for some things. I'm like, nope, I can hear your story. I can give you an opportunity. Why? Because somebody gave me one. Y'all with me? Okay. So, tip number 4, a reason why you did not get the job. You shared your political or religious opinion and it was not asked for. Let me say that again. You shared your political or religious opinion and it was not asked for. Nobody cares who you voted for. Public service announcement. Nobody cares. Nope. Which religion background do you follow? Who cares? Who cares? Nobody cares which religious group you're a part of. You know why? Because it has nothing to do with the job that you're applying for, unless you're going to work in a religious community. If you're applying for a job at a church, well, yes, I guess it's going to matter. If you're applying for a job at a Catholic church, that's your Catholic. If you're applying for a job at a Christian church, that's your Christian. If you're applying for a job at a mosque, that's your Muslim. It doesn't apply like that in regular, businesses and nonprofit organizations and stuff like that, and for-profit organizations. It doesn't apply the same, okay? Because that's not going to be a part of your day-to-day work, okay? And another thing to consider is an employer does not want to think that you can possibly be like a religious fanatic or even a political fanatic, where just at the coffee room, somebody's going to have to worry about if they bring up something different from what you believe, that there'll be a long, conversation or argument, that HR may have to get involved and all that. So if you were in an interview and you shared your political or religious opinion, it's likely that your potential employer decide to go with another candidate. Because another thing is to keep in mind is that an employer is looking for people who knows when to give out appropriate conversation, right? You may never tell somebody your religious or political opinion in an interview, at an office party, or anything else like that. But as we meet people, throughout our working experience that we develop a relationship with, we may decide to share our personal stuff with them one-on-one, not necessarily in a group setting. Okay, so you guys light up the comments and let me know if you guys have ever shared your political or religious beliefs at work. Okay, number 5, you were overbearing, rude, or aggressive, right? I've had a candidate come in before for an interview, and the candidate told me, well, you know, I really don't like being bothered and I really don't like being talked to. But if you want to talk to me once a week, this is exactly what the candidate said to me. You guys, I tell you no lies. If you'd like to talk to me once a week, I'll allow it. How generous of you. How generous. Because 24th of, did I ask you when I could talk to you? What was that about, you guys? Light up the comments. Have you guys ever heard some stuff like that? If you are overbearing, okay, rude or aggressive, it's likely that your potential employer is just going to go with another candidate. You guys, you have to understand that these employers are just regular people like you. They want the person, the candidate with the most experience and the less fuss, right? They want the candidate who's going to do the job, get the job done. If there's questions, ask, you know, before or after or whatever else, and take whatever necessary steps. But they're not going to, you know, they're not going to derail from actually getting the job done. They're not going to be a hassle. They're not going to cause a bunch of problems. Everyone is looking for somebody who will be considered a low maintenance employee. Now, if you guys want me to give out more tips on what a low maintenance employee looks like, let me know, leave it in the comments, okay? And number 6, and the final reason why you did not get the job. Y'all ready? You shared a story about yourself or previous employer that did not show you in a favorable light. Now, many moons ago, this was not my direct employee, okay, but an employee at an organization I was working at many moons ago shared that they had got their previous manager in big trouble with HR. Yeah, they shared some stuff like that while they were in an interview, right? So they shared that with another manager. Now, here's the whole thing. Think of this like this, you guys at home listening, right? If you were managing something, right? Managing a company, if you were managing a department, if you're managing even your own business, right? And someone said how they went above and beyond to have another manager thrown out of their seat because they didn't care for them. Well, that's considered an unfavorable story. Yeah, that's an unfavorable story. And if you say something like that in an interview, PSA, they might not want to mess with you, sis. They might not want to mess with you, bro. Less is more when you are sharing personal information, when you are sharing sensitive information. Less is more. Less is always more when you're sharing medical information. And on that note, I'm going to leave this video here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are new here, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell anyone and everyone, your girls over here giving you guys tips that y'all can use out here, because it's a jungle in this work field. But don't forget it. If you guys are returning, thank you guys so much for being back on deck. Y'all already know I love y'all. That's what it is. That's what it is. All right. Like I always say, there's always another story to be told. But for now,